The man who I sent to prison for raping me turns out had been campaigning and fundraising quite heavily with multiple child protection agencies for around about 14 years before he was sentenced to prison. I always had full intention to reach out to said agencies, regardless of the outcome of the verdict, to tell them what the truth was. I just knew that I would carry a bit more weight and a bit more influence if I was talking about a convicted rapist rather than somebody that got off. I'm not making this video now to shame any person or individual for being fooled by this person's front. It's very easy to be deceived, but in the same way these people were deceived, everybody that knew this person was deceived. I don't hold any accountability for them for that because they were just human like most other people. It does, however, bring some thoughts to my mind around how we actually go about allowing people to work with agencies. Because despite the fact that I would actually argue, I'm guessing around about 98 to 99% of people that work for agencies across the globe are very genuine people with good intentions. It is a place that people go where trust is assumed. It is a place where most people that work for these agencies are going to be good people, and then somebody bad can very easily just mingle in. And it's also a place, if you challenge somebody's motivations, it can be deemed as very unkind, particularly when they're doing so much to raise money. But then I can't help but see the synergy with that, as we did with Jimmy Savile. If you're English, you'll know exactly the story behind Jimmy Savile, maybe less so if you're outside the UK. But again, everybody hailed him a hero because of all the charity work he was doing, and nobody batted an eyelid until people came forward. However, I don't really have the influence to change the legislation on that, but I do think it's something we need to potentially look at as a nation. But my interest was never really about how somebody has been fooled by something. My interest was how they responded to the deceit being exposed. And I knew that this was likely going to trigger cognitive dissonance because somebody that had been hailed up as so wonderful and so trustworthy was now being sent down for having raped a minor and openly admitted in court to having an underage relationship. And as for cognitive dissonance, I expected it to be that way. Somebody that they had learned to trust, somebody they had platformed, spent time with, liked their company of, was now actually a convicted rapist. So I actually reached out to three people. I'm not going to mention the names or the agencies, but three people were in turn responsible for a wider group of agencies, all related to child protection. There was a CEO, there was a founder, and there was an owner. I sent the same email to all three people, cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste, but just changing the name at the top. The first agency that I reached out to, I got a very quick reply who said that the CEO was on holiday and wouldn't be back in until Monday at 9 o'clock. So, first of all, that was a good start. It was good communication. I knew that the CEO was back on that Monday, and by 10 o'clock in the morning, I had a reply from that CEO. And in my email, I'd been very direct. I wasn't rude, but I was very direct. And I'd said, I'd like to speak to you if you're open to it. To which they said they would like to do that. And then by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, on the same day, we were on the phone together. The way this lady approached this call was close to perfect. She completely disarmed me. I just walked out of Crown Court. I just sent my rapist down. I was absolutely overwhelmed with so much stuff coming out of me. And if this person had come back and fought me on it, I was ready to start swinging punches if I had to, verbally, obviously. I was so sick of having to survive this chaos of this man's impact on the world. But she was excellent. She came back with a highest level of integrity, a huge amount of empathy. She was absolutely supporting me and saying we will get every single remaining iota of him off the websites, off the social media sites. She was concerned for my welfare and the impact on my family as well. This lady also said she would keep in touch, and to her word, she did. So again, I've got not an ounce of resentment towards this individual because how she responded was perfect when it comes to integrity. The second person that responded, also from a small charity, this lady was slightly smaller in terms of, I think she was just effectively a one-man band that had dedicated so much of her life and her time to raising money for this particular cause. She was lovely again. We swapped a few emails. We didn't get on the phone together, but her response was close to perfect. And within 10 minutes, every picture or any association with him was removed. Then it came to the third party. And this was the one that had been endorsing him probably the most. This was the one that shared every single social media post. This is one that was under a group, it was an international group. I don't know if it was registered under one agency with multiple different countries or if every country had its own charity registered number. Either way, it was most definitely registered, and the person that I was talking to was the founder. My email was ignored. I didn't like being ignored because I found this quite important, especially since he'd been endorsing and hailing this guy a hero for over 12 months, maybe even close to 2 years. So I left it a bit. I went back about 7 weeks later and said I was upset that he hadn't replied, and I felt this was actually his duty and responsibility as a founder of a child protection agency. I got a very sharp reply saying it wasn't his accountability because this man was no longer in his Facebook group. I said, well, it's not really about if he's in your Facebook group or not. It's about the fact that you've been endorsing him and sharing him as a wonderful person to all your followers, and you've made no reference of that. And the reasons why he's not in your Facebook group anymore is his Facebook page was turned off or closed down once the news became public. I then basically got an email saying that I'd gone to court with no evidence, brackets, all hearsay, and I wasn't the first and I wouldn't be the last to do this to somebody. And then he blocked me, effectively calling me a liar and continuing to support my rapist as a founder of a child protection agency when the man that he's endorsing raped a minor and had an underage sexual relationship with a girl who was 14 and groomed since she was 10. The significance around this, I expected cognitive dissonance to be a thing. I'm basically proposing information and evidence, which I offered to show to all three of them. One guy just blocked me. The other two ladies didn't need it. They immediately just came on board with the highest level of integrity. But I did expect cognitive dissonance to be a thing. I was approaching all of these people on the basis that they knew this man. They endorsed this man. They platformed this man. At some point, they trusted this man. And now I was basically giving them the truth of what was behind it. My interest was how people responded to the truth. Because when you have cognitive dissonance, it's if you have the level of maturity to accept the new information to allow that to change your current state of mind. But if that cognitive dissonance is too much, then a classic reaction that we have to face in society is the fact that somebody's then going to become reactive to the messenger. The accusation that I sent someone to prison with no evidence, especially when I'd said I had evidence I'd offered for them to see, and they didn't ask me one question about the trial directly. The accusation that I'd sent someone to prison with no evidence is classic victim perpetrator reversal. And it is the most classic form of how perpetrators get away with this. And it is normally the way that perpetrators operate, and therefore a child protection agency of all companies should be more familiar with the psychology and the tactics that are used in order to maintain that particular strategy. Child protection agencies, more than any other organizations on this planet, should understand how the psychology works in order to create a safe space for survivors to speak out. And the fact that so many survivors aren't speaking out is almost testament to this type of response. So when I went out to three different people, two people responded like the mission of their charity and what really mattered to them was much more important than the uncomfortable truth that they'd been conned by a rapist. Whereas one person basically put the fact that they'd been conned by a rapist as more important than the principle and the whole essence behind their charity. And that gap right there is the exact gap that perpetrators rely upon in order to carry on doing what they're doing. It's exactly that gap in society that sex predators need in order to carry on doing what they're doing. So I'll just wrap up by saying that if you are somebody or you know somebody that works alongside and very closely with child protection agencies, then technically anybody can work alongside that cause. So the question isn't only who do you let in? The other question that I think is more pressing is how do you respond to this type of information coming to the surface? Because in that moment, that particular response is actually, as far as I'm concerned, a direct reflection of that company's integrity and company values. Because without integrity and without company values, to me, it's just a public performance and paperwork.